it's always very inspiring to hear Rhona speak about the different perspectives that she gained in all the different areas where she has been working on safety, not only in medicine, in the oil industry, and I'm sure you will mention the other aviation areas as well. Rhona has published many books, articles, and one of them, for example, is called Sitting in the Hot Seat. And I remember when I began to work in that field, I saw this book lying in the bookstores and saw it in Amazon everywhere, and I thought, wow, that's very interesting, so I also bought it. It's extremely interesting to read these different perspectives on safety. The articles Rhona has written in so many different fields are really inspiring. One of her latest books, which she edited together with Lucy Mitchell, was awarded, it's called Safer Surgery, was selected as one of the top 5 books on surgery by the British Medical Journals. So I very much look forward to your talk. Rhona.
Thank you, Peter. It's a great honour to be invited here to speak at the opening plenary session of this conference, particularly when, as has been mentioned, this group has been growing over the years, and I only hope in the next 40 minutes or so I can bring some ideas to the table here that may provide a focus for some of the discussions later today and as we go through the meeting. So as Peter said, I come from an industrial psychology background. I'm not a clinician, but in the last 10 years I've been working with clinicians, and more recently have become involved in patient safety in Scotland, where we have a patient safety program and a patient safety research network. And it's really patient safety is the backdrop to what I'm going to talk about here. And Peter has asked me to talk about the linkages between safety culture and simulation, which is maybe not an obvious linkage. And I'm going to say a bit about safety culture, and I'm going to draw a bit from other industries where I work, and then finish by making some suggestions about what some of the linkages might be that could have an overall benefit for patient safety. So coming from the UK, what's the current state of patient safety in the UK? We can put some numbers up here. This would be a recent assessment. I should add, this is not from the London Times. This is from a satirical magazine called Private Eye, but it does kind of say it all. And this is a reflection, this is from a few years ago, this is a reflection that the media have become very interested in patient safety and have basically a story every day almost about some kind of medical misadventure or other, to the point that this magazine was forced to comment as we see. But in reality, the state of patient safety, we don't really know. Charles Vincent, who some of you may have heard of, is a psychologist who works at Imperial College in England. He's published a number of papers recently, this one in the BMJ, asking, is patient safety getting any safer? We have these huge investments worldwide now and the great efforts of people like yourselves here. And the answer is, or Charles's answer, which I would agree with, is we don't really know if patient safety is getting safer. The data are incomplete, the numbers don't entirely agree with each other, and in a sense, I think we are needing some more data, and Michael just mentioned the need for research, and I'm going to suggest how the simulation community may have some unique perspectives that we can feed into our understanding of safety. So my kind of overall framework for organizational safety, this is very much a psychologist's perspective, is there's clearly a whole bunch of technical things can go wrong, or clinical things in your world. And in my side of this equation, looking at the human factors, it's not just looking at the people who are, in a sense, at the sharp end, who are doing the work, the operational tasks, but we have to look at the other humans in the system as well, the managers, the leaders, and in a sense, they're, as we will see, very influential in setting this culture, this environment in which you, I, and other people decide how we're going to behave on a given moment in a given day. And it's that mix of culture and behavior I'd like to say a little about here. We have seen, and you probably know these documents as well as I do, various reports that came out looking at the problem of patient safety and then arguing what we have to do here is improve the safety culture. And this was essentially picked up from an industrial setting, as we will see. And so these are our American and English reports. In Scotland, we've got a patient safety program, and one of our stated aims there is to be improving the organizational and leadership culture on safety. And my thesis here is that the simulation community may be playing a key role in what we can do on that front. So the linkage here between the world of simulation, the world we're in here today, and this safety culture concept, which you may be more or less familiar with, the linkage really here is to look at behavior. And this can be looked at within the context of what's called in industry a safety management system. This is an overarching management of safety by really identifying all the risks, looking at what systems, techniques you've got in place to minimize these risks, but it's also a really multifaceted approach to safety. So you take data from a number of sources and you combine these, and this helps you work out what your present state of safety is and what you do about it. And I'll come back to that point because I think that's part of the linkage between safety culture and simulation. So if we look at culture in the workplace, there's many, many layers of culture. I'm going to talk about safety culture, but we've got professional cultures, we've got national cultures. This is a multicultural audience in this room in a number of respects. And these cultural factors that we bring into the workplace have marked effects on people's behavior, as we'll see. And I noted one of the books there that's a useful volume on that by Helmreich and Merritt, looking at comparing the cultures between aviation and medicine, two cultures that are often compared, but some very interesting differences in there if you start to look at the prevailing cultures in these two different professions. So why is culture important? Culture is important really because it affects people's behavior, and if it affects people's behavior in the workplace, it's going to then influence organizational outcomes such as patient safety, worker well-being, worker safety. We talk a lot about patient safety, not necessarily so much about worker safety. And a definition, and a number of definitions here, but how we do things around here is kind of one of the easiest. How do people behave normally? What normally happens? That's really all the culture's about. Michael mentioned Deepwater Horizon, which has been very much in the news and is very topical in this part of the world. And if you look at the Deepwater Horizon report that came out about a week ago, it has a number of chapters in it dealing with issues around management and behavior and culture. It's on the web. It's an extremely interesting read in this very detailed analysis of multiple companies involved in this particular accident. And one of the themes that is strongly appearing here in a report, as I say, just appearing a week ago, is the criticality for companies implementing and maintaining this top-down safety culture. That's identified as one of the key problems here. It's not just that the blowout preventer failed or the cement wasn't as it should have been. You go back into that accident and start looking at the culture that caused those behaviors on that drilling rig that night. And that's when you start to see the focus here. So this concept of safety culture that has appeared in previous oil industry accidents, this is one from the North Sea in 88, Piper Alpha, where again this theme of safety culture was appearing, and this need to have, we talked about standards a minute ago, good competence assurance systems, good standards, revalidation, and also again in this culture of safety. So this term safety culture came from, as you may be aware, the nuclear industry, the Chernobyl accident in 1986. And really all safety culture is about, the one thing you need to know to understand safety culture is that it's about the prioritization of safety. So where does safety sit against other business objectives such as cost cutting or targets or making money or throughput or building reputation? Where does safety sit when people make decisions? How are your managers, how are your staff calibrated when they make decisions that involve safety versus something else, some other objective. And so it's really what's in people's heads about those priorities that safety culture is about. And there's various definitions. This is one that's picked up in Deepwater from the UK. But the one at the bottom here I think is interesting, and I haven't seen this before, and it links to something I'm going to say in a minute. This is in Chapter 8 in the Deepwater report. A definition of safety culture saying, doing the right thing even when no one is watching, which I think is a very nice idea about how ingrained the culture is, the safety culture, the prioritization of safety. It's not just doing things because your boss is looking or somebody will find out. It's doing that because this is what you want to do. This is your underlying safety value. We've seen some cases in the UK over the years in healthcare. This is the one in Bristol, where an anaesthetist was trying to whistleblow about his concern regarding pediatric cardiac surgeons and the success or lack of success in the operations they were conducting. And what's interesting here in this case when it's examined is this is a person who was speaking up, but the culture was not sympathetic at all, and he found it very, very difficult to be heard when he tried to raise safety concerns. And we see this phrase, cultural antibodies to safety, which I think is rather nice. So thinking about the link now between how people behave, how they try to do the right thing even when nobody's watching, but what's the culture doing? Is the culture supporting them, or is the culture a disincentive to behave in the appropriate way? And we had some reports on this particular event in Bristol in 2001 calling for culture of openness and leadership. But interesting, the person who did the report then re-examined the situation 5 years later, called Learning from Bristol, Are We? And then concluded, we've still got a problem with safety, still struggling to be on the agenda. So these cultural issues are clearly looking like they're going to take some time to deal with.